Now, in the previous section, you were studying the very complicated chemical processes that were used to obtain and utilize energy to sustain life. Now, with all that sophisticated process, it would not ensure the cells to keep on living forever unless they had an ongoing mechanism for creating new cells. So now in this week's approach, we'll be looking at how new cells are formed and how the instruction for this complex process, such as the ones we learned, respiration and photosynthesis, are passed on from one generation to the next. You will also learn a little bit about chromosomes and the cellular component that contain the cell's genetic record. So we will be focusing from parent to an offspring generation. Now, the process of cellular reproduction has two parts. You will hear of the term mitosis and you will hear of the term meiosis. Mitosis as a name, let me spell it out, mitosis, and the other one is meiosis. So you will hear of these two terms. It's important to know the purpose of each. The first form of cell division, which is mitosis, is the nature's version of cloning, in which you will get an exact copy of the previous cell. On the other hand, meiosis is mainly to do with sexual reproduction. It's a policy or a process by which certain environmental change can be ensured. In this process, a combination of genetic materials from two parents is followed by a series of steps. So it will also result in variation within the population. So keep in mind, mitosis is the process by which we will have exact copy of a cell, and meiosis is to do with sexual reproduction. So you can see in both cases we have the first group of cells, and we have the parental generation, and then the daughter cells, as they're called. The daughter cells in mitosis would be exact replicas. The daughter cells in meiosis would have some form of recombination. Okay. Now, eukaryotes and prokaryotes have a very special region within the nucleus where all of this information is stored, and that area is called as a chromosome. Now, an unduplicated chromosome is only going to be made up of one strand. A duplicated chromosome is the one that has two exact copies of each segment. When you have a duplicated chromosome, then each length, this blue length, is called as a chromatid, and the adjacent chromatid pair is also called as the sister chromatids. And these are just some vocabulary words that we need to know before we go on to the steps of mitosis and meiosis, because we will be using these terminology of one chromosome, unduplicated, versus a duplicated chromosome. The process of mitosis and meiosis will separate the duplicated chromosomes. So of course, if you have two chromosomes, then you can see after division each will get one each. If you just had one to begin with, there's really not much you can do after cell division. You can't really get half and half. So before cell division, the chromosome is always duplicated. And then another very important feature happens at the end of cell division, and that is the cytoplasm also needs to divide. So there's not just purpose of just the chromosome being divided and the cell carrying out the process and still living in the same enclosed cell wall or the cell membrane. It has to actually divide into two individual components, and by doing that it divides its cytoplasm and all the different parts of the organelles and different structures that are present within the cell into two equal proportions. Now, prokaryotic cells, however, have another way of cell division, which is very simple, and one of the processes called as, for example, budding, which you will see in the yeast cells. Budding just means that each cell will just produce another bud and it will separate out. So that's an asexual mean of reproduction. Okay. But at a very primitive way of reproduction. Mitosis is a process that is going to give you an exact copy, and this is a process which is needed during cell replacement or cell growth. So from the time an infant is born to an adult stage, that would be through the process of mitosis. If you have a scar tissue or you cut yourself, then the cell needs to be replaced. Again, it would be mitosis. It's also an asexual reproduction, as in this reproduction you really don't need cells to unite. It's a continuous process of repeating a series of processes in which you get exact replicas or cloned. However, each individual organism has a very unique number of chromosomes. For example, humans have 24. So there's a 24 pairs. So we have 48 chromosomes, but they're in the pair of 24. So if the sex cells also had 48, then 48 times 2, which would be a male and a female cell, would give you 96, and that would change the chromosome number of humans, for example. So there has to be a process in which the gametes or the sex cells reduce that number. So this process by which the chromosome number is reduced to half, which is 24, and then after fertilization of an egg and sperm, you come back with a fertilized cell that has 48 chromosome, will continue to keep the same species. So meiosis is a process which will only take place in sex cells. The rest of the cells will undergo mitosis. Now, the chromosome is a very unique part of the DNA that we contain, and previously I did mention to you, like if you had a long string, think of a DNA, for example, if it's 6 feet long and you had to fold it, you would need some sort of a structure to fold it around, some sort of a spool. That spool is provided by these proteins that are called as histones. So they fold around the histones, and eventually they will get organized into chromosomes. Nucleosomes are another smallest unit of organization, and it's after the histones get more organized. I did put this down, and later on I think I'm going to take this out, so you just can actually skip this part. So just go with the simplest structure of chromosome, and let's look at what is a cell cycle.